My name is Nick Jaskolski. I am a Life Scout with Troop 142. I'm here with Major Michael Battlesmith. It is February 2nd, 2019. We're at the Armed Forces Reserve Center in Barling, Arkansas. I'm here with another scout from my troop, Chorde, Bartholomew, and this is a Veterans History project for the Library of Congress. Thank you for joining me in this interview. So to start, when and where were you born?
I was born April 7th, 1985, in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Who were your parents?
My mom, her name is Catherine James. Mm-hmm. My father, his name is Doug Smith.
Thanks. What were their occupations when you were growing up?
Don't have any knowledge of him. I've never met him before, except whenever I was really, really young as a baby. My mother is an LPN, so she's a nurse. She actually spent the better part of 25 years in the cosmetology industry as a hairstylist, but now she is a nurse.
Oh, wow. Do you have any siblings?
I do. I actually have one, Jessica, who I share the same mom with. Mm-hmm. I grew up with her. Excuse me. Also have another one. Mm-hmm. Her name is Mary Elizabeth, who I have on my father's side, who I've met once.
So are you the only one of your family to serve in the military?
Outside of great uncles, yes. My grandmother had 5 brothers. They all served in either the Army, Air Force, or Navy.
What was your doing before you joined the military?
So I joined the military when I was 18 years old, and went through college, did ROTC at Arkansas Tech University, then commissioned on to active duty after that point, and spent 5 years on active duty. And then which that led me to my job here.
So you were initially active Army?
I was.
Were you artillery when you were active?
I was.
So you served. So at first you went into ROTC right after high school?
Not immediately after high school. I did 1 year of college at a junior college, and then went to basic training. Upon completion of basic training, I came back. I was gone for 1 semester. I went back into college, and after I went to basic training, I joined ROTC.
Where did you go for basic training?
I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
Fort Jackson. Do you remember your drill sergeant?
I do vaguely. I don't remember their names, but I do remember them vaguely. Yeah.
So at basic training, how well did you adapt to the military life?
It was a culture shock, just like any change in a person's environment. It definitely at the time it helped me develop a level of discipline that I needed early on in life.
What was your family's reaction to when you joined the military?
So the day that I came home from MEPS in Little Rock, and my grandparents raised me. My grandparents and my sister were sitting at the table eating dinner, and I walked through the front door and told her that I enlisted, and she started crying.
Oh.
So, but at the same time, it was also a happy moment.
So what was your motivation for wanting to join?
911 had some to do with my decision to join. But coming up through high school, before 911 even occurred, because I was a junior when 911 occurred, coming up through high school, the military was always appealing to me. It was my only way to pay for a college education, and I wanted to advance myself and advance my education. So and also I wanted to serve.
So you you went to college at ROTC, and you were active for 5 years.
I was.
In that time you were active, were you artillery? What unit were you in?
I was in 3rd Brigade of the 101st Airborne Division out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Oh, that's awesome. And you went to air assault school?
I did.
That's awesome. Did you go right after ROTC or?
So I went to air assault school while I was in ROTC, while I was in college. I was a simultaneous membership cadet. I was an SMP cadet.
Oh, cool.
So I was in the Guard
at
the same time while I was in college. And my Guard unit at the time sent me to air assault school during the summer.
Oh, wow. And then how you decided you wanted to go active after college instead of going to Guard? Were you in the 142nd when you were?
I was not. I was actually in the 39th Infantry Brigade.
39.
I served in HHC 1st to 153rd as a 11 Charlie indirect fire infantryman, which is a mortarman.
Oh, wow. So when you were active duty in the 101st, your artillery, is that, were you active duty when you deployed?
Yes.
You were. Where did you deploy to?
I deployed to Coast Province, Afghanistan, both times.
If you, what are some memories you feel comfortable sharing?
I remember my first tour. It was obviously more of a culture shock than the second time. The first tour, I remember specifically the day that I flew into my COP, or my combat outpost, where I was assigned for the entire year. In a very remote area of eastern Afghanistan, probably about 3 or 4 miles from the Pakistan border. I remember flying in on the Chinook helicopter, and I remember seeing from the sky, what looked to be this ran down, half destructed combat outpost where I was going to be living over the next year. So that's obviously one of my fondest memories of when I initially got there.
While you were, whenever you were deploying, right before you deployed, what was your parents' or your family's reaction to? They
knew that it was coming. Whenever I was in Field Artillery Officer Basic in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, in 2009, I graduated Officer Basic course at the end of July 2009, and reported to Fort Campbell 4 or 5 days later, at the beginning of August. Before I left Fort Sill, I knew which brigade I was going to, and I knew that they were going to deploy early the following year. So it was something that I did. It was a situation in which I had 7 or 8 months advance notice, so myself and my family could prepare accordingly.
So you kind of had an idea that you were going to deploy kind of ahead of time.
Yeah.
So you were there. Your first tour was 12 months.
It was
12 months. So what was, when you arrived, what were like the locals' attitude towards American troops?
Their attitude toward us was positive for the most part. They were always eager to engage with us. Our Afghan counterparts over there, the Afghan Border Patrol, Afghan National Police, who we worked alongside, were also very, very ecstatic to have our presence. The local nationals, whenever we would go on patrol and we would go into the villages, they were all very, very eager to speak with us and cooperate with us.
Right.
So they were very appreciative for the most part of our presence there.
So, when you deployed over there, you were a lieutenant?
I was.
Were you a platoon leader at that time?
So I was an FA lieutenant in a light infantry company.
Oh.
So I was a company fire support officer. So I did that. I was in that job for the entire year, for the entire duration of my first deployment.
And while you were over there, did you what kind of friendships and camaraderie did you develop?
Yeah, so that's probably one of my fondest memories of my tours in Afghanistan and active duty in general. The friendships, the relationships, the camaraderie that you experience in those units. It's something you never forget. It's the type of camaraderie and friendship that you build where you can go without seeing somebody for 5-10 years, and when you see them, you just kind of pick up right when we left off.
Wow.
Whenever you go over there, I've always my mindset was, even though your family's back home and they're obviously in your mind every day, all day, you can't be reliant upon your family.
Right.
Only what you have over there is the man on your left and the man on your right, and that's what builds that camaraderie all throughout your unit, and ultimately the camaraderie that you have in that unit is what brings everyone home safe.
While you were deployed, how did you stay in touch with friends and family back home?
It was very limited at times. When we first got there, we did have internet that was at some point in times intermittent, and we had 2 phones. Those eventually went away about halfway through the deployment, and we went a month without having any type of communication. Minus being able to access the internet on our government computers. So during that month, I would email home on my government computer, and later in the evening, I would let guys from my unit come in and email their families as well. But that went on for about 30 to 45 days, and then we were able to acquire an internet package, from some country in Europe, where we were able to have internet again, and we got 3 phones. So the phones were very useful, but at the same time, whenever you're in a remote area, in East Asia, wherever, there's always a lag time, and you have to wait for what you say, the people on the other end can actually hear it.
Yeah. So, the outpost you were at on your deployment, how many people were there at one time? Was it just kind of...
About 90.
About 90?
We actually manned 2 locations. One was an outpost. The other one was like a patrol base.
Oh, so you
which that patrol base didn't have any structure.
Oh man.
There was a perimeter that we built with HESCOs and barbed wire, and then we slept on the ground or in our vehicles. And there was only a platoon-sized element at that location at all times.
Oh man.
And that location was about 1.5 kilometers from the Pakistan border.
Oh wow.
So while the combat outpost was obviously more fortified, had structure, and was larger in size, and that was where the rest of the company was at. And we had about 80 to 90 people there.
Okay. So coming home from your first deployment, how were you received coming back by your family and friends?
Yeah, it was. I'll never forget that day. We landed sometime in the middle of the night. I want to say it was somewhere around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I distinctly remember as soon as the wheels touched down on the runway at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, everyone on the plane was just jumping up and down and hollering and yelling, and everyone was just so happy. And then we all got off the plane and we got in formation, and we marched into the hangar where everyone was sitting on both sides, and everyone was cheering. It was a good moment.
Yeah. Were you able, like today, are you able to still keep in contact with some of your buddies from deployments?
It is limited.
Can imagine.
But some
probably all across.
Yeah, some people are still in the active duty. Some are out. Unfortunately, it seems like every time. It seems like there have been several deaths since that first tour, and not all of them have been military related. Some of them have been guys who have gotten out and moved on to civilian life, and it seems like every time something has happened, it's been 2 or 3 times. It obviously makes it back to everybody. So via Facebook, or I still keep in touch, limited touch through text and phone calls, and so I'm connected with some of them on LinkedIn. So because I don't actually have Facebook anymore, but yeah, still keep in touch, and the reason for that is it goes back to that camaraderie piece.
Right. So you mentioned you had 2 deployments while you were active?
I did.
Your second deployment, when was that one, if you don't mind me?
It was, so I went on my first tour in January of 2010, and I came home in February of 11. And then I deployed again the next year in August of 2012. And it was just a 9-month tour. I came home in May of 2013.
Were you a lieutenant at that time?
So I got promoted to captain the day that I got on the plane to deploy my second time. So I didn't go as a lieutenant. I went as a captain, and I was a battalion staff officer at the time. Went to a different location. Went to the same province, but a different location.
And that was a 9-month?
It was 9 months, yes.
9 months. And then whenever you came home from that one, how different was it from coming home from your first deployment?
It was the same, but at the same time it was different, and I'll explain. The first tour was very kinetic and in nature at times. I wasn't in a very safe area. It just wasn't a safe environment for a lot of the time. The second tour, I was on a bigger. I was in a bigger base, different location, where there were multiple units. The outposts out of that during my first tour, like I said, there were about 90 people. The second tour, I was on a base with probably a couple of thousand. So a lot more stable, and the threat had died down a little bit since the first one.
So whenever you went back to that region for your second tour, how different was, I guess, the environment from your first, like in terms of the people and the landscape?
Yeah, so I actually wasn't too far away from the location that I was at previously, and I didn't patrol out and about like I did the first tour. But as far as like the people, again, they were very positive toward us. They were very happy about us having a presence there. I actually had a larger role in mentoring the Afghani forces over there the second time.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to interact with them a lot more than I did the first time.
Oh, wow.
You know, so that was a plus in that I got to see their side of things. I got to listen to their input.
Yeah.
So outside of that, the landscape was all the same.
Yeah.
It actually, I was only 12 months 18 months had elapsed from the time that I left the first time until the time I came back the next time.
Oh, man.
So I know 18 months sounds like a long time, but not much had actually changed.
It's pretty much back to back.
Yeah.
So your second deployment, you interact a lot more with the locals than you did the first deployment?
With the Afghani forces.
The Afghani forces. So in that deployment, was it mostly training the Afghani forces?
A lot of it was. I was a battalion staff officer for my battalion, and we didn't own battle space, but we did own 8 hybrid firing points across the brigade AO.
Yeah.
So logistically, it was my responsibility to support them as a battalion S4 logistics officer. But lateral to that, I also had a responsibility to coach, teach, and mentor the Afghani Kandak S4. Kandak is Afghani for it's one of their echelons, just like a battalion or a brigade is for us. So lateral to my duties as a battalion S4, I was responsible for mentoring and coaching him.
And once you came home from your second deployment, what did you do from there? You were a battalion staff?
So not long after I got back from my second tour, I made the decision to get off active duty. I returned in May of 2013, and I went on terminal leave in September of 2013. So I continued in that role as a battalion S4 whenever we got back, but only for a few months. And in July, August time frame, they had a replacement come in and backfill me.
And when you got out of active duty, did you did you have an idea that you were going to go in the Guard, or did you kind of think that?
When I got off active duty, I went ahead and transitioned to the reserve, which was a mistake. So my last day on active duty was December 1st. So my first day in the reserve would be December 2nd. Excuse me. And I got in a reserve unit in Oklahoma where I was moving to take my civilian job that I took. I did not enjoy the reserves. I did a couple of drills, and after the first couple of drills, I made the decision to see what I could do about getting into the Arkansas National Guard.
So when you got out of active duty and got a civilian job, was it difficult adjusting from military to civilian? Really?
Extremely.
Really? Was it because of the different, I guess, leadership styles?
I could go on. I could wear this topic out. It was difficult for many reasons. The transition from military life to civilian life is difficult. It's substantial in itself. Getting up and putting on the uniform every day, and versus getting up and putting on civilian clothes every day was just. I mean, I know that sounds little, but that's big in itself.
Right.
Dealing with people who don't necessarily want to work there wherever you're working, but they're there because they have to draw a paycheck.
Right.
In the military, you deal with folks who want to be there because no one's forcing them to join the military. So generally everyone wants to serve who you're working with. Not everyone operates with that type of mindset in the civilian sector. So trying to figure out how to get the maximum potential out of them, so that you can be successful is very challenging whenever they don't really want to be there or care.
Right. And so you were in the reserves for a little while, and then you went to the Guard. Did you initially go into the Arkansas Guard or Oklahoma?
So I went into the reserves in Oklahoma, but when I got out of the reserves, I transferred to the Arkansas National Guard. I knew that the 142nd existed on this side of the state, so I had a previous relationship with the officer recruiter in the state of Arkansas from when I was in college, and I contacted him, and he got the ball rolling on getting me into the 142nd.
Oh, that's awesome. And what was your role in the brigade when you first joined?
When I first came to the brigade, I was on brigade staff as the brigade liaison officer.
Cool. And you've been in the Guard for how many years now?
This time I've been in for going on 5 years.
5 years.
My culminating Guard time, if you include the time that I was in the Guard whenever I was in college, then going on about 10.
Wow. And do you think, like looking back on all your experiences in the military, would you do it again?
Absolutely. Without question.
And how did your experiences with your deployments, has it affected your everyday life?
I think that I can remember whenever I came back from my deployments, especially the first one and the second one too. A lot of anxiety associated with coming home. A lot of anxiety associated with transitioning out of the military, and I think that that's something that just corrects itself over time. It's something that you have to just let time fix.
Right.
So I'm obviously a lot better now. I don't struggle with anxiety near the way that I did then, but seem to have health-wise, I seem to have developed a blood pressure problem at some point. So that may have been the result of some of my time spent overseas. Then again, it may just be genetic. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I think that my time spent overseas in stressful environments, in high stress environments, has made me a better leader, and that I'm more well-rounded. Whenever you are put in high stress situations, and with a mission, with a task to complete, it only makes you better whenever you're in those situations in the future.
So over all the years that you've been in the Army, have there been any officers or soldiers that you've met over the years that have almost been like a mentor to you and like taught you a lot about
Absolutely.
leadership?
Absolutely.
And also, you were SMP, so you went to basic and AIT.
I did.
So you were. Do you think that experience of being an enlisted soldier helped you as an officer?
I do.
With leadership?
I do. I do, because I think that it's important for officers to know how that private feels.
Right.
Know how that specialist feels.
Right.
Whenever you're day 4 or 5 into it, 7-day field problem, and it's been raining the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks for those guys,
Mm-hmm.
And it's important for the leadership to understand
Mm-hmm.
what that suck is like.
Right.
Because whenever you don't know what that's like, then
Mm-hmm.
that affects the way that you make decisions as a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And it also goes a long way in terms of respect. Whenever they know that you know what it's like to live a day in their shoes, they're appreciative of that,
Mm-hmm.
and they respect that.
And what are some life lessons that you've learned from being in the military?
Life lessons. There's so many. I don't know that I could even begin to list all of them. I think that being in the military has instilled so much discipline in me. I don't know if you could equate discipline as a life lesson, but I wouldn't be where I am, professionally or personally, if it wasn't for the level of discipline that the military has instilled in me. Before I joined the military, I spent a year in college and did not care about my grades. Wasted money, scholarship money, going to college. And I can remember that third semester I went to basic training, and whenever I came back, I did a 180, and I started caring about my grades. I started caring about everything. I started caring about my health more. I in general wanted to advance myself and make myself become a better person in life and in society. So, from a life lesson standpoint, I think that might be one of the biggest life lessons that I've learned and gained.
So, how has your military service impacted your feelings about the military and war in general? It's kind of a big question.
Unfortunately, I think that war is inevitable, especially in the given our current state across the globe. I raised my hand and swore an oath to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I intend to do that. That's my stance on it. My experiences thus far in the military have not affected my opinion at all.
What message would you like to leave for future generations that will watch this video?
I think the message that I would like to leave for younger generations is public service is important to our nation. And what I mean by public service, I don't mean just the military, whether it's law enforcement, whether it's the military, etc. Whatever the case, regardless of branch. Know what it's like to serve others. Know what it's like to be your hand, to be the one to raise your hand and say, send me. It was because of that it changed me and made me who I am. And I feel that our society needs public service now more than ever. I feel like that the younger generation would benefit so much from the discipline that was instilled in me. I feel like that that it would only prepare them for the challenges and adversity that is to come later on in life. Gaining that discipline and learning that discipline through the military at a young age, like I did.
And is there anything else you feel like we haven't discussed that you want to add to the meeting?
No, nothing additional, other than I thank you for this opportunity to interview.
Thank you for doing the interview.
All right.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you.